Welcome to the Warfare Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Lane Lawson Craft. Join us here every other Monday. Now, let's get into today's podcast. Welcome to Warfare Parenting. I'm so excited you are here. We have a powerful testimony of overcoming self-harm and specifically cutting. We have Dena Yohe. Hello, Dena.
Hello, how are you?
Well, I'm so happy you're here for this whole episode, 3 episodes for self-harm. And if you missed episode 1, you need to go back and listen. It's all about self-harm. What is it? What does it look like? And today, Dena is here to share her personal story about how they overcame this terrible experience, but victory was there. So, Dena, I'm just going to let you share on your experience.
All right. Thank you, Lane. Well, for me, it was over 20 years ago when our middle child, our daughter, Renee, was only 12 years old. And we had gotten into an argument. I was angry. She was angry. She was getting all worked up. So as a good mother, I said, Renee, why don't you just go in your room and try and calm down, and I'll come back in a little bit and we'll talk about this. Well, when I came back, I discovered that she had cut herself up and down the insides of both of her arms from wrist to elbow. It looked like she'd been in a fight with a cat and the cat won. These angry welts. And I couldn't believe it. I never heard of anything like this before. I didn't know anything about it. And when I saw her arms, I felt like someone punched me in the stomach. It just took my breath away. I literally fell to my knees and just, why did you do this? I thought, do you want to kill yourself? What does this mean? I don't understand. And I handled it so poorly, so embarrassed to this day. I threatened her, telling her, this is bad. You don't do this. If you ever do this again, you're going to have to see a counselor. Like that was going to be punishment. Well, since then, I have apologized to her, and she's very gracious. She understood. But we did not talk about it and just pushed it under the carpet, and it went away. And it never happened again until about 4 years later, at a time where she had become clinically depressed and she was hiding how she really felt. We began to see some signs that were concerning. And when we read a paper she'd written for school, all of our red flags went up because it sounded like, are you talking about yourself? Do you feel suicidal? Do you feel hopeless? Is this you, or is this just a paper? We sat up literally all night trying to ask good questions and trying to listen until finally, she said, yes, I'm feeling so depressed that I've started cutting again. And I've even made some attempts on my life. And that was the beginning of, at least we knew, we had been so blind, never saw. We did see little things here and there, but we lived in a cold climate at the time, so it wasn't unusual to wear long sleeves all the time. On occasion, I found bloody tissues, but she did get nosebleeds in winter when it was inside and the air was dry. So there were excuses that kind of made sense. But from that point on, our whole focus was to fix her, to get her help, find a counselor. And then we were thinking everything will be fine. Well, it wasn't. Renee didn't really want help. She wasn't ready to talk. However, over a period of time, many years, she gradually wanted help. Because you see, what happened with her was that she found other ways to soothe the inner pain that she was struggling with, cigarettes and then alcohol and then drugs, and experienced a lot more painful, traumatic experiences that took her many years to recover from. I can tell you happily that today she has overcome her self-injury. She no longer does this anymore. And she would say she finally learned to love herself. She finally learned that she could talk about this inner pain and that it wouldn't kill her. She could there was help, there was hope, and that she was going to be okay. But that was a very long, very slow process. And for my husband and I, um, we were so lost. We didn't know what to do. We didn't know where to turn for help. We knew no one else going through anything like this, so we were embarrassed and ashamed. We didn't want anyone to know because we didn't want them to think badly about us and our parenting, especially as Christians involved in full-time ministry. And we didn't want them to think badly of her. So we just jumped in and began to learn as much as we could, reading books and websites that counselors recommended. Um, so it's been a long journey of growth and understanding, moving from being scared to death. What does this mean? Do we talk about it? How do we talk about it? To finally having more understanding and peace and knowing that, okay, this is our daughter's journey. And how do we support her and not be the panic stricken parents that freak out, but are able to journey and walk alongside of her? So it's been a big learning curve for all of us, for the whole family. We're grateful that we are where we are today, but it's been very, very difficult.
This story of victory, it brings hope to many people that love teens and young adults that self-harm. I love the fact that you continue to impart that it takes time. This is not a real simple, easy experience to find healing. It takes sometimes years, as y'all have experienced. And so I hope just that one measure of hope today for parents or grandparents or loved ones of a teen or young adult that is doing this, that there will be healing. We have to be patient in the making.
Mhm.
And would you say, Dena, that was probably one of the greatest takeaways that y'all learned about it?
Mhm. Definitely, that there's hope and healing for anyone who wants it. So much and more today than there even was at the time when we began this journey. Renee said it got to a point where anything upsetting was an excuse to hurt herself. Um, and she finally realized that she couldn't live this way. This was not going to end well. So just the path that it took us on of learning so much about ourselves, learning more about our relationship with the Lord and how He is always there for us in our darkest moments has been so powerful. They've been some of our worst times, but also best because of how the Lord really met us there and how we all grew closer as a family as well. Who would think as a result of all that we went through, I ended up writing a book published in my 60s. Who does that? Well, people do, but I never thought it would happen to me. Wrote a book called You Were Not Alone, Hope for Hurting Parents of Troubled Children. And Renee wrote parts in it, and she writes a little bit about what she would say to parents whose children are self-injuring and many other topics. And then something unique about our story, Lane, was how it went viral.
Yes, I want you to tell them. So here, I just want people to see that the glory of God was so shown in this powerful testimony. And let's talk about that. Tell them how that happened.
Well, it was very unexpected. And doesn't God work that way? When our daughter was at one of her lowest points after her first time in rehab, she was still quite young, only 19. And she was in a very bad way. A group of young adults from our church felt led to go to her. One of them was in recovery himself, and so he had a good understanding of what she was going through. They did take her to a rehab center the next day. She had been so reluctant to go the night before, just did it up big time, which is what a lot of people do before rehab, taking a lot of drugs, She thought she'd ruined everything. And so she cut herself pretty badly that night, F up on her arm, which was how she felt about herself, a lot of self-hatred and loathing. Well, when they took her to the rehab center, because she had fresh wounds on her arms and wasn't detoxed, they said, we can't take her, but if you'll take her somewhere and get her detoxed for 5 days, bring her back and we will try to help her. Well, the individual that was spearheading this attempt to help Renee said, okay, this is not a good thing for people to do in general, but they all came together and they brought her to his home and stayed around her 24/7 and loved on her and supported her and were just there with her, magic basketball games and Christian rock concerts to get her through those 5 days. At the end of the 5 days, one of the men that was part of this felt like this was something very unique and special that was happening here. And he asked permission if he could write about what was taking place. And she said, well, if you think it will help even one person, okay. Well, this was before Facebook. MySpace was the thing at the time. He wrote this story, called it To Write Love on Her Arms. The idea behind it was that when people who have the love of God in their hearts go to people who look hopeless and in a dark place, who hate themselves, we can write love on their arms. We can make a difference in their lives. So he wrote this story and shared it with a few people at our church. They were so moved by it. They said, oh, you've got to put this on the internet so it can impact more people. We read the story and yes, it was very moving, very beautifully written. He put it on the internet and in a short period of time began to get messages back from people all over the world saying, thank you for writing this. This has given me hope for myself, or this has given me hope for my friend who self-injures. I'm going to go and encourage them to see a counselor. And they were talking about things that no one was really talking about at the time, especially in Christian circles: self-injury, suicide, mental illness, because Renee struggled with a number of mental health issues, but they were offering hope. So what transpired was, because this was going to be Renee's second rehab, we had said, we will pay us and the insurance for your first one. If you ever need it again, that's fine, but that will be your financial responsibility. So they knew there was no extra help coming from us other than helping with food or medication. So the young man that wrote the story worked for Hurley at the time, Hurley t-shirt company. And his buddies designed a t-shirt just for him with the name To Write Love on Her Arms on the front and imprinted the story inside in the back of the shirt. Well, because the story was resonating with young people everywhere, guys, girls, their parent, everybody wanted a shirt. And the only place they were going to sell them was within our church in their young adult and college age group, which was quite large at the time, to help pay for her rehab. So much money was coming in. So many people wanted t-shirts. They had to form a nonprofit to legally handle all the money. And they not only paid for her 4 months in rehab, but they have helped her ever since, all this time. And they, just a few years ago, they gave away $1 million that year to the National Suicide Hotline, to counselors to help offer scholarships for therapy for people who can't afford it, all kinds of things around the country. So it just became this phenomenon that her story was the catapult, or the genesis of, all about education, awareness, but community. And it was an online community, but they also went to Christian rock concerts and festivals and college campuses, just offering a place for people to come who were struggling or had friends that were struggling, to talk and support each other, and that it was okay to not be okay. Well, one thing led to another. And a few years later, a movie was published or produced. It was released by Sony. Actually, it was one that China hacked right before it came out. But it's called To Write Love on Her Arms. And it gives hope. It shows the reality of recovering from cutting or substance use, that it's not, girl gets help, girl's fine. No, it's up and down. You reoccur, but you don't give up. You keep pressing on. So that was another huge surprise. The movie, the nonprofit, they've touched many, many lives. They have chapters on college campuses, and now even some in the high schools. So it's all, and then our ministry, we started Hope for Hurting Parents. Well, on this journey in 2011, to help the parents, because there wasn't a lot out there that was faith-based in particular. So we do a lot with support groups, helping people start them, a blog, a website, and other materials. So yes, something very good. A lot of good has come from what looked bad, that we read about in Genesis, the life of Joseph, how Satan intended it for harm, but God for good.
Wow. Well, this is so wonderful, Dena. I want to also tell everybody everything that we talked about today in this episode is at their website. She is the co-pastor of Hope for Hurting Parents, and it's hurtingparents.com.
Co-founder.
Yeah. And they can see all the TV parts, the interviews, right? And find the movie trailer and things like that.
Yes, Renee was actually interviewed on, I think it was NBC years ago. They did a news piece, and my husband and I have been on Focus on the Family and Family Life, and with Dr. Dobson on his New Family Talk radio ministry. Very privileged to share our story and give parents hope that we're not alone. We're not the only ones. It's not all your fault. You don't need to carry that guilt or that burden, but that you need to find other people who understand and will be there with you to help you walk through what might be a very long journey.
So powerful. And we also want to leave you hope today that no one is beyond healing, and that self-harm with God's touch will be healed. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you again for your time, Dena.
Thank you, Lane.
What a great day we had. Thank you again. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Warfare Parenting. I hope you found some encouragement or helpful info today to help you on your journey. If you have a specific topic you'd like for me to talk about, or a guest you'd like for me to have on the show, please feel free to send me a message on Instagram or Facebook. Listen, I love connecting with you, and so I've made it really easy for us to stay connected. Text Hi Lane to 55444. That's HILAINE to 55444. Also, be sure to follow the podcast so you never miss an episode, and leave me a rate and review. I would be so grateful. I'll see you next week.